NBC News has just confirmed that actor Malcolm Jamal Warner has at the age of 54. Authorities in Costa Rica telling NBC News that Warner accidentally drowned while swimming in the ocean on Sunday. Warner is best known for...
The sky over Playa Grande had that ruthless beauty, the kind that, like a horror movie without a soundtrack, seems cinematic until actual life unfolds in front of it. The shore was rhythmically touched by waves, selfies were taken by tourists, and until he wasn't, Malcolm Jamal Warner was just another man having a good time on vacation with his family. He reportedly smiled as he waded out into the ocean, oblivious to the invisible tide that would alter everything. In a matter of seconds, according to witnesses, the waves swiftly and cruelly carried him away. There were screams. One man, a stranger from Nicaragua, dove in after him as people ran. The lifeguards were too slow. CPR wasn't sufficient. There was nothing.
I know that this incident took place on Sunday in Costa Rica. He was on a family vacation. He was swimming off of the coast of a town called Cocles in the province of Limon. He was swimming at Playa Grande. I mean, I've visited Costa Rica a few times. I was there with my family a few years ago, and those currents can be...
Locals reportedly hauled him out of the water without even realizing who they were attempting to save. 20 minutes of frantic attempts at resuscitation took place on the beach under that idyllic sky, as his wife and daughter stood close by, perhaps praying or perhaps aware later. The Red Cross verified that he was pronounced dead at the spot. Once the Huxtable to a whole generation, Malcolm Jamal Warner passed away suddenly at the age of 54. A scene like that shouldn't be the property of someone who brought joy to millions of others, perhaps. Though it is part of the goal, this was more than just a terrible mishap. Many people perceived it as something more familiar, calculating, and cold because this was more than just a well-liked actor who was washed away. He was a man who had quietly established a living by refusing to play the games that Hollywood offered, a man who never allowed himself to be a stereotype of black identity for financial gain, and who avoided the limelight until he had something genuine to offer. He refused to remain silent and to be stereotyped. Warner's failure to comply was notable in the context of sellouts and soundbites, and that's why some people question whether he was driven under by forces other than the ocean.
I mean, when I was on the show and we had such good times together, I was probably 18 and Malcolm was probably 17, 16, I don't know. Wow. And we would take walks together, all of us, and pick up food, talk, played basketball, hung out on the weekends, went to parties together. He was so...
And let's discuss the alleged blacklist curse in Hollywood. The whispers are audible to you. Actors who speak out against the system or who simply defy expectations end up in a precarious situation. Chadwick, Prince, and Whitney all experienced it. Unexpected this, enigmatic that, and now Malcolm. He left behind a legacy of subdued resistance, no DUIs, no public outbursts, no scandals, just constant, considerate work and a determination to shield his family from the spotlight. The headlines weren't necessary for him. People begin to raise questions that Hollywood doesn't want to answer when he abruptly turns into a one-faced character in Costa Rican waters.
So unbelievable there. And Branson, I also was reading that just days ago, he had another podcast episode that was dropped. And now a lot of, fans are starting to really listen to that as maybe one of his last times that you hear him.
Warner was more of a sentimental throwback to a more quaint time in television history. He had completely assumed the position of cultural elder in recent years, producing, writing, lecturing, and even starting a podcast a few weeks before he passed away. The purpose of Not All Hood was to present to the world a picture of black existence, free from preconceptions. It was also intimate. The black community has so many different aspects, he remarked. We desired a place where we could truly explore, but we now have to consider whether that level of candor was too risky. Was Malcolm prodding an invisible bear? According to some insiders, Warner had subtly declined a number of significant parts that called for him to adopt a more streetwise or less intelligent character. Warner left a lucrative pitch meeting when an executive stated the O's grown up. But let's not make him too woke, according to a former network producer who wished to remain anonymous. The check wasn't really necessary for him suddenly. The calls became less frequent. His podcast served as a direct line of communication with the public without the need for intermediaries, but the speaking invitations eventually dried up. and now he will never speak again.
What he really had was a multi-decade career in Hollywood, spanning several different shows. I did a little bit of research before this, and he had about 84 credits on his resume before passing away at just 54 years old. And TMZ also obtained photo, possibly the last photo of him that we may even have ever seen on TMZ.com at the airport on July 13th coming into Costa Rica. It's just so tragic to look at that photo and think that just a week later he'd be passed.
The riddle begins to twist at this point, though. Authorities in Costa Rica claim that a second male from Nicaragua, who is only 29 years old, was also involved in the same crime. Unrelated to Warner, this man plunged into the current to try to save him. Just a few days after he almost died, he was hauled out, stabilized, taken to the hospital in severe condition, and then quietly released without a murmur. No family remarks, no images, no press conference, not even a first name. All we know is that he lived, and he disappeared from view as soon as he was able to walk once more. Why is this man going unnoticed, since he was the only other person in that water? Why is the media treating him like a piece of trivia and otherwise? A near hero would be paraded through late-night interviews and morning shows, but nothing here. Silence on the radio, and we're not the only ones who think the quiet is a bit too deliberate. A journalist from Costa Rica described the dearth of information as unsettling. The man may have seen something he shouldn't have, according to another source. There are already a lot of theories.
I wanted to remind you, as I remind myself, that no matter what's going on, there's always a reason to smile. Like, if you just take a minute to stop and take stock, I guarantee you can find at least one reason to smile. And if for some reason you can't find a reason to smile, then that's probably the best time to be the reason for somebody else.
What did he observe before the current took Warner? Was he having trouble? Was there anything he said? Were there other people in the water, above all? Why hasn't this survivor made public statements? Was he reached by anyone? People are talking. There was constant speculation that Warner might have been being watched prior to the trip, and that some industry people were worried about what he would say next on his podcast. If you think it's unrealistic, keep in mind that we're discussing a field where NDA letters are more important than wedding vows and careers may be lost more quickly than an Instagram post. This leads us back to the name that simply won't go away, Williams. Katt, for years the comedian turned cultural whistleblower, has been yelling from the sidelines about the industry's deviants and powerful people who host extravagant parties that nobody appears to discuss when the lights go off. He once stated, "Pity wants to party, and you have to tell him no." Yes, I did. Williams alluded to the type of gathering where refusing doesn't gain you respect. It makes you the target of someone. He stated it publicly and hasn't changed his mind.
Right, because P. Diddy be wanting to party, and you gotta tell him no. You got to tell him no. I did.
According to Williams, 2024 will be the year that all of the major players go to hell. He's not wrong yet. Diddy is in federal custody. His residences were raided by the FBI, who left with more than just receipts, allegedly confiscating thousands of oil bottles and other items used in the notorious freak-offs. Tabloid fantasy is not what that is. That is a documented seizure by the court. And more shoes are on the horizon, assuming Katt's schedule is accurate. There are secrets piled high when we watch a Geno game, and every fragment that falls reveals a moniker that we used to believe was untouchable. So, weeks after starting a platform centered around truth-telling, a well-respected, grounded, and yes, culturally aware actor like Malcolm Jamal Warner unexpectedly dies. In a distant country under unclear circumstances, people pay attention. Warner demonstrated that it was possible to escape the machine and still live a dignified life, particularly in the Black community, where he was more than just Theo. His job spoke for itself, therefore, he was a kind man, the quiet one, and the friend who never needed to brag. We are now forced to question whether his goodness was sufficient to keep him safe.
All lies will be exposed, that's all. And anyone who takes that the wrong way, know why they take it the wrong way.
And there is more to the survivors. Quiet than meets the eye. It is the initial tremor in what might be a cascade of revelations about the title. One that has the potential to reveal more secrets. One that might reveal Malcolm's trustworthiness and insecurities, because in an industry like this, you can't drown without someone on the shore looking on. However, the quiet surrounding the surviving man begins to reverberate more loudly when we juxtapose it with warnings that have been disregarded for years, long before Warner's last swim. Katt Williams, who is no stranger to controversy or bravery, was pulling skeletons from Hollywood's closets He has uncovered skewed party invitations, called out moguls, and, more recently, accused an unseen elite of twisting strings from behind the velvet curtain. Williams claims that this elite is ritualistic in addition to being affluent. Additionally, it causes careers to vanish rather than just end.
When people are against the Illuminati, then they get punched in the face all the time. The press hates them, and nobody likes them.
He referred to them as the Illuminati, not aloud, repeatedly, not in code, not in whispers, and it seemed like a new door closed each time he did. He continued despite a decline in bookings, postponed specials, and canceled studio deals. Earlier this year, he threatened that all of these big deviants would end up in hell in 2024. Some nodded, while others chuckled. However, the laughter is now beginning to wane in the wake of Warner's mysterious accident. What else might Katt be correct about if he has been correct about Diddy's empire of secrets and the entertainment industry's fixation with control? Let's join the dots. Warner had been given parts that required him to downplay conversation, exaggerate stereotypes, and compromise cultural nuance in order to increase viewership. He repeatedly said no. In a town that only values black excellence when it is marketable and subdued, that is not good business. Warner made a dignified decision. He left writings that made fun of him and plots that made fun of him. He wasn't upset, he did it on purpose. However, intention can appear as rebellion under a system that rewards compliance, and disobedience is penalized.
I hate to bring up the sad news, but news did break today of the untimely passing of Malcolm Jamal.
I can't believe it.
This script is not new to us. Prince changed his name to a symbol and painted a slave on his cheek when he began discussing ownership and label corruption. Then came the rumors that he was lonely, suspicious, and brittle until one day he vanished, discovered by himself in an elevator in a home he had constructed to get away from the system. Michael Jackson then informed us all that they don't care about us through his lyrics, interviews, and subliminal metaphors. He battled for power, the industry, and his library. Then, one day, Neverland's lights went out. Additionally, the only narrative left was what other people had written for him. These weren't merely catastrophes, they were cautious men with platforms, money, and influence who were outspoken black artists. Men who began to wonder why the gatekeepers all appeared to know one another in private, and why they were unable to own their masters. The headlines changed to reflect their journey toward freedom, medical mysteries, overdoses, and accidents. It wasn't prescription drugs or pills in Warner's instance, it was paradise. And for some reason, that makes everything even more eerie.
Early morning swim, he had gone out to the coastline just before sunrise, and a little after sunrise, got into the water. Not too many details about what exactly happened once he was in the water, but authorities did end up finding his body actually hundreds of yards away down the shoreline. His body was discovered in a rocky cove. It was brushed up against that.
Let's discuss patterns. A disproportionately high percentage of well-known celebrities have passed away far from home. Throughout the past 20 years, vacations that ended in funerals, high-end yachts, tropical beaches, or jet-setting celebs slipping away in hotels abroad. It has an almost poetic quality to it, something too far away to pristine. Supporters are unable to organize, the family is unable to react quickly enough. Autopsies are conducted by unknown authorities. Additionally, the stories are typically prepared. He was worn out, she needed to sleep. They never returned from their swim. Yes, that is tragic, but practical as well. If a crime were to be committed, it would be the ideal one if there were a rulebook. Make it appear as though nature would be on the first page. We're not suggesting there is one. Sand doesn't leave fingerprints since the oceans don't speak. And until someone starts posing the proper queries, such as why Warner was by himself in the surf, we might never find out if something nefarious occurred in those Costa Rican waters. Why, after being momentarily lauded as a hero, has a Nicaraguan guy disappeared into anonymity? Why aren't journalists investigating who covered his medical expenses? Who talked to him prior to his disappearance? Or with whom he is currently staying in?
What's good? Yes, I got the flower in my hair. Today's my daughter's birthday. She put the flower there, so I'm rocking it. What? It's a beautiful day here in Atlanta. I just wanted to shout out and just spread some love and some good cheer. And you know, life is out here lifing, right? For me and for everybody else.
Here's a further perspective. Before going on vacation, what was Warner working on specifically? It was more than just a podcast. It served as a platform. According to insiders, he had previously recorded a number of unreleased episodes and intended to target what he referred to as the machine behind perception. According to reports, The subjects covered included the silent discrimination in Hollywood, the true reason why some shows are never approved, and the psychological cost of being in a field that thrives on delusion. Those episodes have not been heard by us, will we ever? Even while those unpublished episodes were kept quiet. A few quotes from Malcolm Jamal Warner's Not All Hip podcasts have begun to reappear online, and this is causing some concern. Throughout the last few weeks, listeners have noted slight but noticeable changes in Warner's tone. His tone had been calm and collected, but now there was a hint of haste and irritation in his delivery. He discussed legacy as a burden as well as a gift in one of the final episodes, to be broadcast to the public, implying that speaking the truth can be costly in a field where being silent is frequently necessary to survive. Although the podcast was never promoted as a political program, it became more and more obvious that Warner was attempting to make a deeper point. Fans are now analyzing every phrase through a fresh perspective.
Historic and frozen in time as this iconic character. What did that mean for television, and what does it still mean to this day?
Sam, Theo Huxtable was me. Theo Huxtable was my brothers. Theo Huxtable was the first time someone that looked like me saw someone that looked like himself on television. He was the epitome of what we as kids, in a certain community were.
And some of his observations have become nearly prophetic. He discussed the perils of being genuine in a society that makes money off of masks in a now widely shared video. Many see this phrase as his subtly criticizing the industry's demand that actors, particularly black males, play parts that are palatable to the general public, even at the expense of their dignity. There are rumors that Warner may have concealed messages he couldn't express aloud in the podcast by using nuanced commentary and artistic analogies. This would not be the first instance of a public figure using art as a shield against a system that silences censors. However, the fact that Warner's death is only a few weeks away makes the timing too important to overlook. Additionally unnerving is a sudden stop of production at the same time that Warner hinted at a new miniseries that would examine the sanitization of black narratives for white comfort. The subject matter was contentious, to be sure, but it was consistent with Warner's. However, some people think that series might have been a decisive factor. No files have been made available after his death, and there is no documentation that the programs were ever recorded. Would someone have intervened before the episodes were broadcast? Before traveling to Costa Rica, did Warner receive any warnings, coercion, or even a veil? Those last podcast episodes, which may have been the last remnants of what Malcolm Jamal Warner really meant to say, before everything became silent, have become something of a Rosetta Stone due to the lack of transparency from his team and the unclear responses from streaming services.
Everything I'm telling you, that's why I can say them so freely.
Ken, I need to know. You here, get your number.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
What about those who were aware? A few of the veterans Warner was close to had complex pasts with influential executives. According to an award-winning screenwriter, Warner wanted to reveal who is actually making the money and peel back the veil on the smoke and mirrors of representation, because he was growing increasingly irritated with the Fox wokeness in the industry. According to the same source, Warner had developed paranoia in recent months and started to wonder about legal protection and surveillance. He was cautious but not afraid. What does that leave us with then? A well-liked performer who has no detractors, no scandals, and no history of substance abuse. Lost. An enigmatic witness who survived to share the story. Quiet. An increasingly realistic trend of powerful black voices being silenced the moment they fall out of line, and underneath it all lies a system that feeds on distraction, penalizes disobedience, and encourages silence. Before we begin to wonder who is writing the script, how many times must we watch the same story unfold?
Not been funded. They pay you to not talk about things they don't want you to talk about. They tell you that themselves.
Pat Williams has already come to terms with the possibility that he may never again be permitted to enter the rooms where agreements are made. In order to maintain my integrity, I declined $50 million for times, he said. You have to tell Pitty no because he wants to party. It's more than simply a joke. It's a warning. Because he's aware of what occurs at parties where phones are prohibited, and NDS are longer than the guest list, an industry veteran declines a fortune. Warner did not approach. Boundaries were the foundation of his life, and now he's gone, just as he began to use his position to voice uncomfortable realities.
Yes, obviously so heartbreaking. Such a tragedy. Here in the office, so many Cosby Show fans of this wonderful actor, and he had a very long career, even after the show that he was known for.
And even still, we keep returning to the survivor. Without any fanfare or explanation, the man was discharged after receiving treatment in the same clinic and being plucked from the same ways. Did he notice Warner having trouble? Did he hear someone else close? Or did he hear any shouting or splashing? Was there something he saw that scared him into keeping quiet? Or did he belong to something else? Was he supposed to serve as a warning or a witness? Who stands to gain by silencing Malcolm Jamal Warner? What if his death wasn't only an unfortunate accident? Was it a message, or was it simply the ocean? And who comes next? If so, how many more voices will go before it's hard to ignore the pattern? Share your theories with us in the comment section. Are we witnessing a mishap or a plot? Who do you think is actually in charge? Malcolm, keep your mind sharp, keep asking questions, and rest in power. You are more than simply a fictional character.